cunts, don't forget to click the subscribe button.
And then when I was going through the Bible and I realized it was my bucket list from, not the 80s, I don't think, but certainly in the late 90s. I think I made it at the turn of the century. I think that's when I did it. Remember 1999, all the computers were going to collapse and the world was going to end and that horse shit? Yeah, and Ross Perot said there's a lot of shit and you should, short all these stocks because none of that's going to happen. So then I put this bucket list together. It's not my first bucket list, but it's the most recent that I can find. And in 2010, I put a bucket list together. And by 2014, Sally and I did it all but one thing, going to space. And we were knocking off the things off the bucket list 6, 7, 8 a year, all of which cost money, some of which cost big money. North Pole expedition, South Pole expedition. By the way, one of the reasons there's no more scientific groups is because it's so fucking expensive, nobody can afford it, I guess, other than countries. So we're kind of the only non-country expedition. And it could be between 100 and 300 grand a head, depending on how much extra douche you want. You want, dancing broads with big tits and shit like that, it costs towards a 300 end. Yeah. But not many, I bet you nobody in this room has ever had sex at either of the poles. Well, yes, we have. It's not as much fun as having sex in a plane and watching stuff float. But anyway, I'll talk more about that when we're not on YouTube. But for 20, 25 years ago, Russia, Northern Lights, flying to space, Mongolia, Loch Lomond, Northwest Passage, Alaska, Sri Lanka, Falkland Islands, Kathmandu, Iceland, the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, polar bears, British Isle cruise, Grand Canyon, Russian River, wine country, which is wine, Patagonia, Lapland, concentration camps, Dachau, Auschwitz, and Mount Rushmore. What's conspicuously absent from my bucket list?
Everest.
Money. Not even any shade that I wanted to. So when I tell you money's not the only thing, I mean it. It's the only thing anybody fucking keeps track of. The Forbes lists and all these lists of wealth. But money, because I had already had, or made, or thought I made anyway. And that wasn't what I was hunting for. And now, of those things, British Isles, Grand Canyon, concentration camps, Carolinas, Kathmandu, Alaska, Loch Lomond, and Russia, we've all done. Sally and I have done. And this was our joint bucket list, But when I was watching it last night, when I was saying my prayers, and I found it in the Bible, and no money. Now I have more money now than when I made this list, but and because of this list, I used the proceeds that I had to spend to do the things that I've done on this list. My net worth is not even fractionally reduced because my net worth's big. But it was interesting, and I went through a couple other things that I had written, and I still have the same rosary that I got when I had a First Communion, and so we were going through that. But a lot of people say that my praying is tantamount to meditating. In fact, I think you said it. And I don't look at it that way, because all the Catholics that pray don't consider themselves meditating. And then I don't know what differentiates meditating, but almost all the kids that I've trained successfully meditate. In fact, I can't think of one that doesn't. Now, there's a couple up there that don't, and there's and several that aren't up there because I can't use their name right now. But meditation is, it's not nouveau. I mean, they've been meditating for fucking ever. But like religion, Lenin said religion was an opiate of the masses, okay? And part of religion, I would suspect, is prayer. Although, and most of you in this room meditate in one form or another. Of course, I only can use the information you give me. If you give me bullshit, you know, and all the paperwork you filled out before when you went to the regular seminar. But most people do meditate. Now, I personally consider meditation a crutch, me, as an individual. Because he's not going to help you. And you can't pay your MasterCard with it. As I made infamous, I believe my first interview with Brian on London Real TV, these many, seems eons ago, 5 years ago, more or less. Almost 6 years ago. Today, we left hanging the brothers' deal because we didn't see what you were going to say about it. We finished off with what you were going to say about it, and then Tom and others were making suggestions, recommendations, whatever you want to call it, and Tony deferred. He says he's going to handle that because you had already thought of those alternatives. And part and parcel of you giving your own deal, your own story, is to not necessarily, like Tony said, poke holes in it, but to add to it. But most of the deals that you have personally aren't worth a shit. And that, you know, some of your businesses aren't worth a shit. You should just turn the key. And it's not a matter of balls to turn the key. It's what do I do instead? Many of you, and not just you that have come through the seminar, have ascertained, and rightfully so, that I just bought myself a job. A job that I can write off suits, cars, and bimbos. You know, that's basically it. And and to the best of my knowledge, I don't know any of the other guys and gals, the gurus, that are telling you to turn the key on your business because you just bought yourself a job. But to do that, to turn the key, you have to swallow the fact that you've wasted 10, 20, maybe 30 years of your life. And that's not an easy thing to swallow. What's my family going to say? Now, if you have no money and you turn the key, well, then you're fucked. If you've got some money and you turn the key, you're fucked until you run out of money. And I know some of you in this room think you have funds enough to last 6 months, 20 months, 36 months while you do QLA. And I can tell you, I don't even have to look at the numbers. With one or two exceptions in the room, you don't have enough money because you cannot determine or ascertain with any degree of certainty how soon you're going to cash flow. Like Anelli said, I had 4 months to cash flow, and he said in the other subsequent webinars, I didn't do it in 4 months. Well, 4 months to cash flow is a tough fucking road. Unless all the stars line up juxtaposed perfectly, and we all know that doesn't happen very often. And it took him 7 months, and he did it quickly. 7 months to cash flow, that means not getting some cash out of a deal. That means cash flow to live. So that's not just, to pull 50 grand out or 100 grand. I mean, that's cash flow to live, to pay your bills and tuitions and for your family, etc. And so the average of the last couple of years is about 17 and a half months. From scratch, zero, no money, to paying all your bills and your bimbo's bills. About 17 months. Which seems like a long time when you've only got 4 months reserve. In fact, it seems like forever. And most of you have grown up hearing on the news or through your parents or through your grandparents or somebody that you should always have 6 months reserve in the bank, fuck you money. That's not real fuck you money, but so you don't starve to death. And as I've told you, and I've been saying for a long time, that I spent 125% of every penny I made because I never wanted a backup plan. Now, for most of you, that would be frightening. You make $1 million in January, and I'm not saying $1 million is any great shakes, but you make $1 million, and I spend $1,250,000 in February, and then, but after 2 or 4 or 5 years, it's hard to spend because everything you spend isn't necessarily an expense. Some of the things that you spend actually make money in. Now, I'm not counting cars, and because I never counted those as investments. I never counted art, and we have a lot of art, as investments. And I'm sure all of our art's gone up 500%, 1,000%, maybe 10,000%. We have a fabulous alcohol collection, wine collection that we could set up and be wine merchants. And I'm sure that's all gone up. But I don't count that because I count those as consumables. But Josh Kim, rightfully or wrongfully, is on the spend 125% of the money he makes. He doesn't want a backup. Now, it's funny to say, how can you have a backup when you're 18, 19, 20 years old? I don't know any 20-year-old kids that have a backup, unless they're thinking of their parents as a backup. And most parents, not all parents, most parents would not let their kids go down the tube. Some of your kids deserve to go down the tube. But like Tony said, she's my mom. There's certain things you're not going to do, okay? But I've seen kids allow their parents to go down the tube. Literally. Sheriff's taking the furniture away. Now, that family had issues, to say the least, So we're going to have Jason, while hopefully it's still fresh on your mind what Tony said. It's hard to forget what the fuck he says. And that's part of his charm. It's like the good news is I'm here, the bad news is I'm here. That's Tony's sales pitch, you know?
It works.
Well, I know, but don't preach to the choir, please. I know. I've lived that all my life. But I'm sure, just like with me, a lot of people won't listen because they shoot the messenger and they never listen to the message. And so for those of you that have obnoxious personalities like mine and just loud personalities like his, you'll figure out a way, as he has, because he and his brother are pretty successful before QLA standards and even by regular standards. You know, if you've got millions, you know, in most parts of the world, you're considered to be successful. But for those of you that have 4, 5, 6 months savings or backup plan, you should act like you have no backup plan. Because subconsciously, you know, it's like, again, I'm sure I'm not the only student that waited till a day before the exam to study. But this program is no different. A lot of people, and that's why I've done away pretty much with the mentor program in terms of a year and 6 months and that kind of stuff, because we took numbers, or I didn't do spreadsheets. I haven't done a spreadsheet in 25 years. But we had to figure out, when did the kids start being more successful? When did their success rate on calls, in meetings, one-on-ones, making offers, LOIs, when did it really start to get meaningful? And it gets meaningful about 8.5, 9 months into the old program, which was a year. And when were they kicking the ball into the net? Between the 11th and the 15th month. Because you wait too long. And human nature is mostly optimistic. Not all, as we all know, we've been around negative people. And so, and then when we cut the program from a year to 9 months, to 6 months, to 3 months, to 2 months, the success ratios went like this, faster. Tom's an example of that, 81 days. Although nobody whines to me too much, but to the staff and Winnica, who's got nothing to do with it. Jesus Christ, if I'd only been here 18 months ago, I could have had 12 months of the old goat. And that would have been a detriment to you. Now you got the bullet, you got the gun to your head, and the hammer's not quite cocked back all the way. You either perform or you don't perform. Most people perform to where you can live, i.e. cover your bills in the second year. A few in the first year, very few though, very few. But now with the mentor program more or less disintegrated, now they're coming out smoking. They're coming out smoking. Now I always knew in my heart they could do it. People used to ask me, maybe somebody in this room asked me, if you were leaving the seminar today, how long would it take you to do a deal? And I normally say between 10 days and 2 weeks. Build a dream team, accountants and lawyers, banks, find a deal, do a deal. Between 10 days and 2 weeks. 10 days and 2 weeks, that's it. Of course, it would be seller finance. You know, even I can't get a deal through the bank in 10 days. Now, in some parts of the world, I can get a deal through the bank. Where this young lady comes from, I can. In 10 days and 2 weeks. But, you know, short of that, a legitimate rule of law country, you can't do it. Now just think how long it took you to get a chairman. Just thinking how long it took you to get a board. Now that you know how to do it, and that's why when guys lose their deals or lose their boards or lose their chairman, they're able to replace them so quickly because you learned, you know, you're not, you know, I tease you that you got an amoeba brain, but even an amoeba brain, you know, can figure out how to get through the bullshit faster the second, third time around. And we have guys, again, I'm not suggesting this alternative, that are on their third and fourth boards. Josh Kim, in his infinite wisdom, has gone through, I believe, 3 chairmen, 3 CEOs, but he's gone through 25 board members, 25. And he's only been out of the program 4 years last August. 25. Yes, sir.
When he goes through different chairmen, like let's say that chairman had 5%, and then now he's...
And yes, you owe him the 5%. Even a Chinese person, you got to owe him the 5%. Guys, don't worry about the 5%, Tony. Don't worry. Remember, well, in your 2 cases, it's a bad example because you both got money. But I mean, this is fuck all. This is monopoly money. And 2 or 3 of the people that Josh has gone through had 5%, and he bought them out 10 cents on the dollar. That's average. And I'm not telling you that's the rule of thumb now. Because some guys, now you couldn't buy me out for 400 cents on the dollar. So I'd be there to fuck you. I can just see bending over your little Chinese skinny ass and a lard ass Cuban and fucking you for practice. You know, I'd make sure nobody made any fucking money. But I'm not the kind of person that you want to try to take stock away from. Or I wait till the day you're a week before you're going to do an IPO, and my team of lawyers show up in buses. Boom, boom, boom. They got papers. You know how you see lawyers carrying shit into... I mean, I got 40 of them, and they're all, you know, dressed like Brian there with their pinstripe suits. And we're here to make sure that Mr. Peña is fairly represented, and there will be no fucking IPO. But, you know, the IPO is 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But there are people that lay in the bushes and waiting. But normally you can buy them out for pennies on the dollar, because the truth of the matter is a minority shareholder doesn't have any real rights except one. If you pay a dividend, you got to pay him or her. I tell you what, first rule, don't ever pay a dividend. Bonuses are not dividends. But the second right they have is the right to look at the financials, the numbers. Supposedly, in most places where there's a rule of law, yearly. But I can just see giving Jason, he gets a request and he responds 2 years later. If then. And I got to go to court with an injunction to get the fucking... Yeah. Okay, that's a response. And I got to go to court with an injunction to get those numbers. It takes a year in the courts. But, so the numbers that they have the right to see, you more or less shine them on and push them out as long as you can. So the guys that have the minority stakes that you're concerned about are smarter than that. And there should be a pay price to action. If you fuck up and you get 3 bad chairmen, Josh, you ought to pay for them a mistake. Now, what kind of decisions can you make when you're 17, 18, 19 years old about character? You don't know shit, right? And most of, all but I think one of the people that he's gone through are based on his youth. He didn't understand really what it is. And it's harder, and not just Josh, but almost everybody waits too long to get rid of people. Now, the young kids, they use the excuse because I don't know anything, which is true. The old guys, well, I'm going to have to buy back the stock. And now, if you're going to take over IBM, you're not going to be buying his stock back for 10 cents on the dollar. So, but you're going to pay for your mistakes. And I'm fortunate that when I was building dream teams and utilizing them, I never made a mistake in character who I brought on. A couple of them turned to the dark side 3rd, 4th, 5th year on the boards because, their wife left them. They caught their wife with a mailman and they flipped out and went nuts. But for the people that I brought on, but I was a pretty good judge of character. And so we're going to listen to Jason this morning. Then we're going to, there's 3 other people. Then that will mean one group has done 2 presentations, correct? And 3 groups have done none. 1, excuse me. And Jason and 2 others. And then we're going to break out. And when I come around to see you, we'll talk about how you're going to start the big cases. I'm going to give you some pointers so you don't waste time. But back to the 125% a year, when I turned 60, almost 15 years ago, Sally and I get together every Sunday and go over where we are vis-a-vis goals, stuff like that. And our trips, and do we really need to make this trip? And who we're going to meet on this trip, and I ask her what her thoughts are. Now, she's been around decades, so she knows almost everybody that we're going to meet with. And if she says, do you really think that's necessary? That means, what are you, a fucking moron? She doesn't say, is that really necessary, Dan? Maybe not. Scratch it out, okay. And to the extent that your partner in crime, meaning your significant other, for those of you that have one, they're not going to understand in the beginning. So that's why I tell them nothing. But if 5, 10, 20 years from now, if you're still with the same significant other, they are going to know something. Because from the outside, they're going to see what worked and what didn't work. And they will remind you, as only a significant other can, what didn't work. Remember, Tony, that guy, I'm using my words, not your significant other's words. Remember that thing you fucked up and cost us 5 months? And the significant others know, and they have great memories, as we can all attest in this room. And nobody can needle you like your significant other. They have an inside track of fucking with your brain. But that's why I tell you not to tell anybody. But the 125%, when I turned 60, I decided we're going to go to cash, and we're going to get rid of all of our assets, outside assets, all of our houses, all that stuff. A couple of things I wish I hadn't got rid of, hindsight being 20/20. And we're just going to, this is going to be a last stand When they're coming over the walls and I'm shooting them down with automatic weapons, this is the last stand from the turrets. We're not going to own anything else. And I thought it would take 2-3 years to get out of all of the things we're involved. It took 7 years. And I know what I'm doing. And we got rid of them. We should have kept the place in Monte Carlo. That was an error of judgment. But the summer we decided to get rid of it was the biggest tourist season in Monte Carlo in 25 years. And there were tourists crawling over your house and your fucking cars. And that hasn't had a tourist season like that since we decided to get rid of our place. Because Monte Carlo is a great place to live. But it's like being in a fishbowl. But when you walk in the casino there, like the James Bond movies, and you got your tuxedo on, and you're going to play blackjack or baccarat and stuff like that, and you're eating there, it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. And there's a lot of James Bond wannabes with money though, because you can't be there without money. So it's a good place that's a good place to sit at the bar in the afternoon and have a couple of drinks, because invariably you're going to meet somebody with a lot of money. Not just because the drinks cost $45 each, but they're going to be there. So when we decided that, and we decided to go to cash, and I don't recommend that for everybody. But one of the things that I do, I devote all my time to you guys, unlike the other guys, and I can't, with my hand on my heart, say I don't have a conflict if you're in property and I have a property portfolio. If you're in financial tech and I have a stock portfolio, because I'm going to look out for my own interests. Even on a subconscious level, I'm going to look out for my own interests. And some things I'm going to look out on a conscious level for my interest as opposed to your interest. But it allowed me to be focused. Now, in the early days, I didn't have anything, so it was more or less easy to stay focused on creating wealth. But as I built wealth over the years, then you lose focus. And then you buy assets, and just like you always have favorite children, contrary to what you tell them, you have favorite assets. And you spend more time not only on that property like Monte Carlo, but thinking about it and, how can I improve it? But when you have none of those things, you can stay laser beam focused. And that's one of the, if not secret. But if you remember the story about Mrs. Gates, who gave a dinner for Bill, and she invited Warren Buffett and a couple other luminaries, and there was a lull in the conversation, and this is Mrs. Gates' father's wife, Bill Sr. Well, what do you attribute your success to? And simultaneously, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates said, focus. And again, when you start listing all the things that you do on a daily basis, you'll see how unfocused you are. How unfocused, or you're focused on the wrong thing. I told you it should take seconds, at the most minutes, for you to decide what industry. It should take you seconds, if not minutes, to decide what vertical. That's it. Bye, YouTube.